It's time for number 47 in my series of video game movie reviews, with the sequel to a video game adaptation that surprisingly was pretty good. So will they be able to match the quality and entertainment of the first film? Well, let's find out. Dead Rising Endgame is brought to us by director Pat Williams, and once again stars Jesse Ratcliffe as investigative reporter Chase Carter. After the events of the first film, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1.5 million people across the world have been injected with the Watchtower Zombrex chip to keep them from succumbing to the zombie virus. So it's starting to seem like we got this thing under control, right? After seeing the shady dealings of the government, Chase Carter is back on the scene to try and figure out what it is that they're doing with this chip. And it seems that they ain't up to no good, and despite Dennis Allstate Haysbert returning from the last film, we are not in good hands. You see, they decided that instead of running the risk of having another zombie outbreak, in 24 hours they will initiate the Zombrex chips that are implanted in all of these infected victims to overdose them all and kill them, and hopefully kill the virus along with them. Upon figuring this out, Chase and his team aren't too keen on this idea, the whole genocide killing 1.5 million people thing. So, with a little bit of help from a scientist defector, they decide to go back into the infected quarantine zone and take out the servers so that they can't initiate this big murderous kill spree that they're gonna do with this chip. However, it ain't gonna be quite that easy. They have to contend with looters, raiders, and gangs, not to mention the zombie horde, and of course, the US Army. But as the clock ticks down, it's up to them to make it across the quarantine city and learn its secrets and hopefully save millions of lives. Dead Rising Endgame is the direct sequel to 2015's Dead Rising Watchtower, both of which are based on the Dead Rising open world zombie video game series of the same name. Different characters for the most part, but the same world. The first Dead Rising film, Watchtower, was surprisingly better than I expected it to be. The Dead Rising video game series has always kind of had like this melodramatic, over-the-top story with a goofy side to it, especially in like the crazy, insane, over-the-top ways that you can kill the zombies and the weapons that you create. None of it makes much sense, and it's kind of out there, but it is fun and entertaining. And this is something that the first movie held on to. It wasn't as goofy or over the top as the games were, but it did feature some of that stuff and keep it fun and lighthearted for the most part. And that's all I was really looking for from a Dead Rising movie. I did not expect or need that movie to be the best zombie movie ever made. I just wanted a fun yet goofy zombie flick with a decent amount of gore, and that's what they provided. Dead Rising Endgame has a similar story to the first one, but they lost a bit of that goofiness. Admittedly, the story here is a bit deeper this time around, and it does expand upon what they started in the first film. And I didn't really have a problem with the story itself. The core of the story is fine, but since they lost some of those goofy sensibilities and lightheartedness from the first film, it kind of took away from it all, and all you're left with is this kind of decent story at best. It's not like a bore fest or anything, but it's not terribly exciting either. They don't really do much to expand upon the characters here. What you knew coming in is pretty much what you know in the end. Once again, that wasn't really the focus of the first one either. It had a bit of character development, but it wasn't all about character. It was just about the overall product. It was kind of goofy, fun, and lighthearted. But as I said, you take that away, and all you have is just this kind of generic zombie movie at this point. Not terrible, but not terribly good either. And even the inclusion of Billy Zane, which is almost always a good thing in this type of movie, didn't really help. That being said, the movie is okay, but it doesn't stand up to the first one. Overall, while the story is okay, the loss of the goofy, lighthearted tone is severely missed here. Now, our performances here are very much in line with the first film. Solid. I mean, nobody's great, but nobody's bad. They're just fine. They're what they need to be for this kind of movie. Nobody's like super cringeworthy or anything, but at the same time, nobody's that kind of heightened over-the-top goofiness that we got with a few characters in the first one. At least with that, while unbelievable, the characters were fun. Here, they're just a bit more bland. Jesse Ratcliffe returning as Chase Carter does a pretty solid job here. If you enjoyed his performance in the first movie, then that's pretty much what you're getting here. Returning cast members Keegan Connor Tracy and Dennis Haysbert are solid as well, and our new cast members all fall in line with the performances of the original cast. The only real disappointment that I had here was, surprisingly enough, Billy Zane. When I saw his name pop up in the credits, I thought, oh great, he'll fit in perfect with this type of movie. The problem is, this movie isn't that kind of movie anymore. The more serious tone and subdued and limited performance from Zane just kind of fits in with everybody else now. Now that being said, he does give a a solid performance, but it's not a Billy Zane performance. Zane's become known for showing up in movies and kind of giving that heightened, over-the-top, yet extremely charismatic performances he's known for. And that's just not what we get here. Him being in this movie does not make it any better or worse. Anybody could have done this character that he did. In other words, there's no signature Billy Zane in this role. And while he doesn't do any worse than everybody else, I was just expecting something else, so I was a bit disappointed when he showed up on screen, and that's not what I got. Still, overall, while the material that they're all working with is a bit more dull, the performances as a whole, especially for this kind of movie, are all fine. Now, from a technical perspective, it does seem like the movie took a bit of a downgrade this time around. I mean, it doesn't look terrible or anything, it is comparable to the first film, but there are a few aspects that don't seem like they had as much to work with here. Namely, the environments. Most of the environments in this one are just kind of dull. Not that they were like all big, huge, and expensive in the first one, but they did just seem a bit more interesting that time around. There's lots of real bland tunnels and what looks like factories and stuff like that they're walking through in this movie, and none of it just really pops. It just kind of seems like just dull tunnels and factories that they're walking through. It's just overall kind of missing a bit of that flair that the first movie had. Now, that's not to say the movie looks bad, it just doesn't look very interesting for a lot of the time. Now, the special effects, they are more or less in line with the first film. Now, it doesn't seem like we get as many of them this time around, but the ones that we do get are pretty good. Two scenes in particular, both of which where Chase has to fight off a horde of zombies, stand out here. The first one, we get some really nice CGI gore effects that I did really enjoy. It seemed like they were peeking over into that over-the-top territory for just a minute, and I did enjoy that. And the second one was less about the special effects that were in it and more the shot as a whole. We get an extended shot of Chase fighting off this horde of zombies as they're all coming into this big room at him from all different angles. He's using everything in the environment in this room to his advantage to take out all these zombies in really creative ways. This scene was shot really well, and it was extremely fun. I had a great time with this scene, and I wish this type of energy was throughout the whole movie. But sadly, it's not, but that doesn't change the fact that these two scenes in particular were really fun and looked great. And while it may not stack up to the original film in visual flair, overall the movie is competent and it looks pretty good. While I may not have enjoyed Dead Rising Endgame as much as I did Watchtower, it was still more or less an enjoyable time. It is a bit disappointing that it didn't quite stack up to the fun of the original, and everything in it's just kind of fine. It's not bad though, it's just, like I said, fine. If you're not a fan of the Dead Rising series, and especially the first movie, then you're probably not going to find much to like here. But if you are a fan of the series or the Watchtower movie, then I think Endgame would be worth checking out on streaming.
Across the street.
Movies like this one are the really hard ones to review because they're not like great, nor are they terrible. They're just kind of right in the middle, just fine. I don't really have a strong opinion either way. However, if you're into zombie flicks, and like I said, especially if you're into the Dead Rising series, then check out Dead Rising Endgame one night and you'll have a decent time with it. So there it is, guys, my review of Dead Rising Endgame. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Fortune City.
So planning on killing everyone.
If push comes to shove, I will stand before the American people and explain why it was necessary.
Destroy it. Destroy it all.
What's next on the video game movie review list? Oh, we are knee-deep in the big budget video game movie phase. This is that phase where Hollywood threw shit tons of money and resources at video game movies with like big name actors and high quality effects so they could capitalize on that video game money. Unfortunately, it didn't always translate over to better stories, but... oh hey, Assassin's Creed.